Hello, it is I, Jesse Blaze Snider. Welcome again to another episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know. Today we're going to be talking about vibration, and as always, we're going to be getting into some fucking crazy ass shit. So let's take a moment to take just a deep breath and connect with our inner guidance so we could judge the various things that I'm going to say here, because I'm not citing every little bit of whatever, but I am trying to point you in the direction of information that you can go find if you're willing to do the research yourself. I've been digging into this all my life. All right, so let's take a big breath here. Ah, that feels good. That feels good. I'll take a sip of my beverage. So, in these past 3 episodes, I've been teaching you the universal laws, the fundamental principles of Hermeticism, all of which sort of can be graphed over each other. So much of the teachings that I am teaching you here are taught in various ways in every Bible and whatever all over the planet. You just have to look at various interpretations that sort of point to some of the things that I'm saying. And what have those important things been so far? Well, it's been one. We are one. We are all one thing. We are all equal expressions of an infinite mind. And that is thing 2. Thing 2, everything is a mind. Mentalism, the principle of mentalism and Hermeticism. We're living in a giant mind. We're in a virtual reality. This is a creation of thought, because things had to be thought up in order to be manifested. Nothing happens without it being sort of possible to be happening, and then once it's possible because it's considered or thought, then it exists. The guy who broke the 5-minute mile, and then everybody else did it too, but for years, they couldn't do it. Well, that's an expression of this idea that there is no creation with solidity and liquidity and all this different these different configurations of things without some amount of planning, of thinking. And if this thinking exists at all, then it exists first. It exists before everything else. What came first, the chicken or the egg? The idea for both. So we're coming from an infinite mind that has thought all of the things, and this physical creation is an execution, one of many, I'm sure, of the mind. We are a physical representation of a realm of ideas. And this is why we have souls. And I know some people don't necessarily believe that anymore. But we do have souls, and there are a lot of things that can point you to the truth of that sort of thing as well. So often when you're getting into esoteric information, the proof is in personal accounts, personal experiences, and it's in volume. It's like the 1,000th interview that I read or watched of somebody talking about being abducted by aliens and saying very similar things to the other 1,000, that I had read or watched. That where I went, well, there really seems to be something to this. And, you go talk to mountain men and people, shaman and whatever else, and they'll tell you the friggin' Bigfoots are still in the forest. Granted, do we have any good pictures that we're necessarily feeling like are credible, blah, blah, like, no. But at a certain point it becomes, am I going to completely invalidate these other people's experiences? Go watch some near-death experience videos. I'm sure after you hit the dozenth one, you will have noticed a lot of similarities to these crazy people who are hallucinating because they almost died. It's their brain dying, and this is what a fucking convenient explanation for a near-death experience. There are universal things, expressions that are going on here. So, whatever the case, we are all one. and we are all living in a giant mind, an expression of a giant mind. We're on the other side of this giant mind. And the fundamental nature of this giant mind is polarity, created by the nothingness that we came from, the possibility, the unrealized possibility. That's where things begin. And then it becomes a conceptualized possibility. The conceptualization comes first. And that conceptualization of maybe something, something. Well, what if we change this, or what if this? Because what's the first change? The first change is nothingness. We're doing nothing. But now a thought, movement, exploration of self in this invisible realm of consciousness. Physical form, I mean, there's a whole lot of shit going on over here. Wouldn't it make sense that it all began as a thought? So you got this thought, and then you got the part of the thing that is still and forever sleeping. And this creates the third law, polarity. Now, and granted, these numbers and stuff like this is like, for me, this is like a number system that I put in. I made it to 13 laws in my own like personal bit because I think it's easier to understand this way. The ordering that I put the laws in, I think, is easiest to understand this way. I do a long form thing that you can find on YouTube called Universal Laws that I shot over COVID. The sound's terrible and whatever else, but it's like a 14-part class talking about all the universal laws and hermetic principles, at length, and going through all that stuff. And there's a lot of different ways of interpreting this information, but for me, it's the law of one. We're all part of this one thing and this one nothing that first existed, and then an idea came about, and that idea gave birth to creation eventually, because there's no time, so it can think all the things immediately, and then it can create things immediately, but the thought happens first. The thoughts happen first. The other side of things is created first. And we've got this polarity going on from this sort of nature of non-creation, of sort of rest, waiting, observation, and thought. And thought leads to, well, maybe this, maybe that, creativity, adjustment, change. So, it's sort of the masculine energy of guarding the thing. I'm keeping this woman safe. I'm keeping this land safe just as it is. And then the feminine energy of like, what if we hung a picture up there? What if we did this? How about this? How about this? And this is very much like my nature. I've talked about on previous episodes that, I'm way more feminine heavy in my energy by nature. I'm this. The masculine nature is to kind of uphold these things. So what do you have there, both in society and within people? You have a push and pull back and forth. I want to stay the same, but also change is inevitable within all of us. So we flow back and forth between, staying who we are and then sort of coming up against different things that ultimately lead to our change. In society, we have some people who are feeling one way, and other people who are feeling another way. This ultimately applies pressure to us as a society to adjust for both. Or there's a war, which is also an adjustment for both, essentially. We've decided we can't get over it, and, now we're going to fight. But there's a polarity. There's these two forces fighting each other. So today, talking about vibration. Why don't they want you to know about the law of vibration? Because it's the key to everything. The first three things that I shared with you are important because the law of one teaches you that everybody, everything is you. Anything you do to anything will be done to you. You will see it. You might not experience it now, but you will experience everything when you reconnect with the consciousness of all things. So you don't want to make other people suffer. you know, and you need to know that everything is a mind, because that's what clues you into the massive amount of control that you actually have over this situation you're in. It's just a mind. This is an expression of a mind. This is a hologram that we're living in. And though it seems so right, we've forgotten sort of the real parameters of the apparatus that we're in, which is a mind. And it seems to be acting all these different ways that we're discovering as we've lost information. But we've lost information. We're coming about our discovery of information really in an ass-backwards way. And I mean, these are things that we'll talk about as time goes on the show. One day we'll do everything they want you to know. Science is bullshit. And we'll talk at length about the ways in which it is. Of course, there's useful things to be had from everything. And there's useful things to be had from science. And it stinks that the parameters that most scientists are operating under don't include these three important laws that make up this foundational thing. This oneness, this nothing, and this something, this mental thing that has created all the things, but comes from the nothing, creating this polarity. Well, if you know that, you can manipulate society, you can reinforce the polarity, you can bring out war and fighting in the times of stress, as opposed to appealing to the center part of people. And knowing those things is the thing that will give you enough responsibility to recognize everything's one. I have a responsibility to others, how I treat them. Everything is mind. It's my responsibility what my world looks like. And I'm going to get a little bit more to how that can possibly be the case. And it is, despite a lot of appearances. And granted, this includes lots of things that you'll agree to before you come down. And then here we forget everything as babies, and we come up and we'll run into calamity and things and be like, oh my God, why have you done this? Well, it's always better. And I think I talked about this on the last episode, but I don't think I actually said the full point or reiterated the full point. Asking why God is always a useless question. You ask, why me? Why would I do this to myself? Why would I think that this was a valuable lesson or experience for me to have? What could I possibly imagine that I could get from this? When you put it to you instead of the abstract idea of God, why has God done this to me? You can't understand God. You can't hope to understand the infinite thing that understands all the things. But you can understand yourself. And from your own perspective, you can usually actually get some really great perspective on why something maybe has happened. And as you move forward and come to information like this, which you haven't had before, you've never had the information that you were creating your whole universe by accident because you didn't know any better. Now you're going to start to know better. And you're going to actually be able to control the experiences that you have in this world. Because the law of vibration states that everything vibrates. Everything vibrates. Of course it does. What we were talking about last time, and this is why I like to do 1, 2, 3. Polarity. Swinging from zoom to that. What's that? It's a vibration, right? Vibrating is moving from one side to another side. Vibrations. Vibrating. Everything's vibrating. Down to the every molecule. It's all vibrating. And then all these molecules amassed together make up, a vacuum cleaner or a light bulb or a computer. All of these configurations of all these vibrating things. And then what does that become? It basically becomes a bunch of ones and zeros because there are a whole bunch of molecules and they're configured in this way. And now there is like a mathematical expression of what this is. My computer is this vibration. It's you are And there's like a physical version of you, and then there's an overlay, energetic, thoughtful version of you that exists beyond the physical realm of you observing and seeing everything and how you feel and what you're thinking and all your thoughts and whatnot. And there's an overlay of that configuration. And these are literally like, can just be boiled down to mathematical expressions. How hot am I? How cold am I? How mad am I? How sad am I? How comfortable am I? Or, whatever it is. I mean, like, it's like, you can tell the majority of these things are very easy to fucking define. Oh, well, it's 76 degrees. We're both this temperature. Our body is this temperature. His body is that temperature. My body is this temperature. You can quantify these things. Everything is vibrating. Everything's a vibration. In Star Trek, and it's so cool because I wasn't like into this kind of esoteric information. When I was a Star Trek fan, I was an atheist most of my life until I was 28 years old. And, if you ever want to hear more about my personal journey of spiritual enlightenment or whatever the fuck you want to call it, I loved Star Trek because it was logical. It was like really logic based. And it was interesting to see that something that was on Star Trek, a concept that was there, I came to realize was like 100% on the money, like the future of medical equipment. They would have these devices and they would see like what was going on with the thing, and they'd scan the bit and this like little medical recorder, and then it would like send a frequency at the cut or the the ailment, whatever it was, and it would heal. They would heal it. And yeah, right on. Like, that's how should we be fighting disease? With frequency. There's so many things that we could use frequency for once we like really break open frequency, and eventually I'll do an episode on Tesla, like, the real Tesla, not the Tesla fucking cars, but the man, and all the different inventions that he's had. And I'm going to do an episode, probably do like 2 separate episodes. One of my favorite subjects ever is suppressed technology. What a wonderful thing to go search up on your computer. It's kind of harder these days because there's a ton of things now that are not available anymore that used to be available online. They've really cracked down. But the information is out there in lots of different ways and on lots of different websites and whatever else. And suppressed technology is insane. The amount of technology that's been suppressed by the government, it's in the thousands. Patents that have been made top secret, the scientists who invented them have been sent cease and desist orders and whatever else, and told not to tell anybody about what they invented, walk away from what you invented and never return to it again. And then the people that the government doesn't go after, the oil industry or other industries that are too big to fail or whatever, they'll go after them. And whether they do it politely by buying up a patent like they did with the light bulb that would never fail. And if you never heard about this, there was a light bulb that would never die. And the light bulb industry just bought the patent and shelved it because it would have destroyed them. This is why we can't have nice things. So, I mean, like, there are like massive transformations of society that can take place when certain things are allowed to be exposed to the light. But, it ain't happening, man. Anyway, there are plenty of people who have already begun to use the power of vibration and recognize the power of frequency, which is just, tuning into a vibration. We spoke before about polarity and about people being able to balance out their masculine, feminine energy, whatever their energy that they have, they can balance it out with somebody else. We are not God. God is all of the things at once, and not a guy in a robe or whatever, but like the consciousness that is basically that this is the dream being had by the mind, right? So that mind, we're not that mind. We are a fractional portion of it. However, when it comes to sort of fractions, it doesn't matter like what number or whatever thing you are, like an infinite versus any component of whatever, there's always a balancing component, something that will equalize the thing. And equalizing the thing brings you back to the center, back to the God vibration of everything. That's what a really good relationship can do for you, whether it's with a man or woman, like romantically, or as a friend, or my uncle, he and I always had the best conversation. Whatever, he was an energy that balanced you, and you were perhaps an energy that balanced him. Whoever it may be that you feel really strong connection to, it's because they are balancing you in some way, and the closer you get to balance, the closer you get to God. So, a good relationship feels like God. A good relationship feels like heaven. It feels like infinity. It feels like all of the things. It feels like I am myself. There is a check and balance to me. Like, I serve a purpose. There's a person to play tennis with. An individual by themselves is ultimately, might as well go back to just being a mind on the other side of things. It's the mind interacting with itself that is the juice that we're looking for, from the fruit, the juice of the fruit, the pot we want. So yeah, I guess I'm going to take a look at my notes here. I just kind of, over the week, I was making little notes about vibration and whatnot. And forgive me if I was a little brain dead last. I've been working, doing extra, just like whatever extra shit that I can get. I was working with my buddy at his extermination company in Florida for a few weeks. And then I just came back and I was working with my ex-brother-in-law, Danny, for doing some construction shit at a building and like painting and sanding and all the shit. And then coming home and doing my podcast. Which is fucking nuts. And then I had to launch my book this week, which is really awesome, by the way. Super fun. It's like the most subversive titty book. It's a X-rated comic book called "Fucking for Our Future" #1. It just launched on Kickstarter. I'm so proud of it. It came out so good. It's like I never thought I would do anything like it, and it has just been making me and my buddy Disney Arnold laugh our asses off for the past year. And people are seeming to love it so far, and it's really great. It just launched a couple days ago, but oh my god, fucking exhausted. So yeah, go to Kickstarter and type in "Fucking for Our Future," or you can go to bldsts.com, which is my company, Blacklight District Studios. There's a cool preview there, and that'll get you to the thing. Anyway, I love you guys. This is a new show. Thank you for listening. If you are, especially if you're coming over from Coolest Geek Alive and all your favorite bands suck. For those of you who aren't music people or comic book geeks and movie geeks like I am, I do a geek culture show every Wednesday and every Saturday called Coolest Geek Alive. It's just like on the industry and what I see going on, and from the perspective of a creative writer and a person who's worked in the industry a long time in a lot of different capacities. And it's like there's never enough time to explain myself. So I mean, look me up if you want to. I've done a lot of different things. And then on Saturdays for Coolest Geek Alive, we do coolest picks, where we just name movies and TV shows that are fucking awesome, and you should check them out. So that's every Wednesday and every Saturday, Coolest Geek Alive. And then every Monday night, I do a show called All Your Favorite Bands Suck. That one's the newer one, not as new as this, but I think we're 28 episodes in. But every episode is a feature of one of my favorite bands, and it's really great. I have a really eclectic taste, and for me, it's just about trying to focus on lots of genres that don't get enough respect, like humor and punk rock and metal and rap and There's so much. Anyway, those are the shows that I do. And then every Sunday night on YouTube only, I do a Coolest Geeks a live stream with my best friend Aaron Sparrow, who's also a comic book industry veteran, and he's written animation. He wrote an episode of Young Justice, was pretty cool recently. That is, close to midnight. It's 11 o'clock California time, 8 o'clock New York time. But that's super fun. You can come say hello and interact with me. Oh, and last thing is you can email me. I'm Jesse Blaze at jessesnider.com. If you ever want to ask me any questions about these things, I'd appreciate it actually, because if I get really good questions, I can read them on the air, and it'll it's a good teaching moment. It's actually so much easier than just kind of going in even with this vibration. I made a whole bunch of notes and stuff, and I meditated a little bit before I came on, so it ultimately ends up coming out of me. But I tend to be I don't know exactly what to say. There's so much to say about, vibration and why they really don't want you to have this information. Um, so it would be great to have emails from you guys. So Jesse Blaze at jessesnider.com. I would seriously appreciate it. And or if you're on Twitter and it's easy for you, I'm Coolest Geek JBS, and on Instagram I'm Coolest Geek JBS as well. So that's all the house cleaning and whatnot. So let's get back to things. Let's go and look at this list. Okay, so one of the first things I want to talk, I got the Star Trek medical device we already talked about. Let's talk here real quick about musical tones. The Star Trek device, the sending a frequency that's the right frequency. You know what a dog whistle is. You spray the whistle. There's a sound. You can't hear it, but the dog can hear it. There's a spectrum of sound, right? Sound frequencies. So it's essentially musical tones. And what do we know about musical tones? We know that, musical tones and mathematics, that they can stack on top of each other, right? You can create a harmony. Different things can come together, and right, it goes similar with colors. It's all spectrums. Some colors come together, they make another color. When you're putting all the colors together, it makes brown, right? So, and with math, there's like a leveling up of a thing, right? You can take leveling up or leveling down. I can take 44 and then I can cut it in half to 22, and I can cut it in half to 11. And these amounts are correspondent to one another, right? So even say there's a dog whistle that is, some frequency that I could program into a little medical device that I could, vibrate at to help your body return to its equilibrium, repair the wound or whatever the case may be. There is an amplification of that quadrupled a whole bunch of times, but it's still that thing. It's just in a different frequency. And granted, I haven't sit here and done any fucking medical things on it, but it is at least to say that there are probably mathematical harmonics within music. Why are people drawn so much to music, and why is music healing and whatnot? And why is the church, you tune frequencies in a church to 432, the organ is set to. And the whole building, when Freemasons will build their actual churches, not these churches that come up in these little box buildings nowadays, but a church that's built harmonically is built to amplify the sound, for the sound to resonate through the people's bodies. And 432 is the frequency, resonant frequency of the human body. So what's that? Connection between the music frequencies and healing and being helpful to people. Granted, I think there's leaps and bounds of things that could be done in terms of our health. And when you look into suppressed technology, you'll definitely find things that purported to use various, frequency technology to help heal and increase healing, or various different options using vibration. So let's see. So I'm talking about musical tones, talking about color spectrum. I'm saving prayer for a second. Ayahuasca sound songs. Oh, yeah. This is interesting. So I did ayahuasca. I've done ayahuasca a number of times, probably like a dozen times or so. I did ayahuasca in Peru, but I had actually more success doing it in California prior to this. And a very interesting experience I had doing the ayahuasca. And actually, I don't actually think it was with doing the ayahuasca. It was a separate time doing the DMT, meditationally. This is, as I've talked about at great length in my intro episode, that's all about myself. I was an atheist for many years. I take this stuff very seriously. My spirits that I talk to are constantly yelling at me for quadruple checking every single thing that they tell me. Are you sure you said that? Am I hearing this right? Is that what you're saying? That's what you're saying? And they're like, Jesus, we could tell you so much more if you just didn't doubt it. And it's not even so much that I doubt it, but I want to be able to come on my show here. I want to be able to talk to people in the future, and I want to be able to go, I fought hard to doubt it, but consistently, this was what I saw. This was what I learned. So I took it very seriously as a responsibility to not kind of willy-nilly, oh, we'll just go with God, man. But to really try to catalog
this experience for myself along the way. And often it has been to the detriment of my kind of crazy psychedelic experiences, because as soon as anything interesting begins, I start trying to understand what's going on. What's happening here? This is so interesting. What's going on? And I will work at it until I figure it out. And a lot of times, using my brain like that to like figure out an explanation to what's going on. And an explanation, any explanation, is myopic, because any explanation is just sort of focusing on something that you can grab at to explain something. You know, if I start trying to explain an elephant to you, you know, I can explain it, but a picture is going to go a lot better. You know, seeing a picture of an elephant is going to go a lot. Being with an elephant at a zoo or in the wild, you know, like that's going to teach you what an elephant is way better than me explaining it. So I'm always just really trying to learn as much as I can from these things. But the moment I bring my lower mind in and I start trying to think, I will sometimes take myself out of these experiences faster than I normally would, another person would be in them. You know, which I get jealous sometimes because other people get lost in experiences, and I'm just like, man, that's never happened to me. And my spirits tell me it's just like, well, it's because you don't really let go. You want to record everything. You want to learn from everything. You want to understand. And I'm like, yeah, why? Like, what the fuck's the point of like going on a journey if I can't fucking come back with the knowledge of the adventure? Like, I don't want to just go on the journey and forget all about it kind of thing. But really, it would be better if I could. And like, it's a good lesson to myself as I say it out loud right now. It would be better if I could just kind of let it go, not try to quantify it in the beginning, and then, you know, have the experience come to a conclusion and then try to figure it out after the fact. So we'll see if I learn from this experience at all, but I don't know if I'm gonna. We'll see. I'm trying. So when I was doing the this DMT ceremony or whatever, I remember being, for lack of a better word, sort of haunted by a song. And like, I wasn't haunted by it like in the, oh my God, this is freaking me out, like bad way. I was haunted by it in like, it kept coming and it kept coming and it was just there. But it was very good, actually. It was a very positive haunting. I'll call it like, I don't want to call it a song. It was more of a repetition of a series of sounds, probably like a dozen of them. And I mean, I'm going to try to do a little bit of an approximation. This isn't like anything like of what it sounded like, but like this is going to be like close, okay? It was going to be like, Pussy Willow. Pussy Willow. But it was like perfectly timed and repeating. And these little sounds, like, you know, I can't really do it justice. Like, each one of them was like a little segment of a sound. And there was only two of them that I was able to pull out an understanding of what they meant, actually, and really what they were. It was very soothing. And that is what it was. That is what the sounds were. They were soothing sounds. The two sounds that I managed to pull out, I don't remember if it was specifically Pussy Willow. It was something like that. It was like the name of a flower, and it was like a really silly name of a flower that I felt was silly. And the sort of intuition that I got about it, or the communication I got about it, I don't remember what it was at the time, was that my energetic connection to this word was very pure. It wasn't tainted in any way, shape, or form, negative or positive, but I thought of it as sort of whimsical and silly. When I'd heard it the first time, I was like, oh, that's like a cute name. And it was just sort of like perfectly distilled as just like a light thought that I had that had not been corrupted in any way. The other sound that I was able to pull out was the sound that my grandmother and my mother used to make when they would bounce me on their lap as a child. They would go, they'd sit me on their lap kind of thing, and they'd have me sort of in the middle of their legs, like in between their legs, and they'd go bum 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 bum, or sometimes it would be bum 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 butts, and sometimes it would just be sort of like a oh oh, and they'd drop me through their legs, and I guess my grandmother would do it like that, where she would just sort of go oh, and I realized that this sound, one of the sounds that I was hearing, was this sound of my grandmother like dropping me, and I was so happy, yay, and I would go through her legs, and I would come up, and I would, yay, and I'd go through her legs, and I'd come up. It was a sound that really brought me joy and serenity and peace. And that all the sounds, even though a lot of them were sort of weird sounds to me, like a lot of the things that I said, like, are kind of close to what a lot of it sounded like to me. Ultimately, probably because I just couldn't make it out in the format that it was being presented to me. It was just sort of like one weird noise to another weird noise to a kind of sound or word that I kind of would recognize, or sort of a thing that I would kind of be like, that I kind of know what that, like, and I would be trying to figure out what is this? What does this mean? But it was all of these vibrations, these frequencies. And that is, vibrate. You're buzzing in your girlfriend's ear. You go over to her in that certain way. You change your vibe. What's that moment in Inside Out when, like, the husband thinks he's got an in, and all of a sudden his eyebrows go up and his energy changes? His vibration is changing his vibration. There's a new thing to do, right? So this vibration here was to help me relax and to calm down, to relax my muscles. Like, so much of what my spiritual exploration with psychedelic medicine and plant medicine, mushrooms, or I forget the toad medicine I had done at some point. I mean, experimented with a lot of things. It's all been for medical benefit, because I woke up at 30 in terrible pain. And again, my intro episode explains a lot of these things. And I've essentially been in chronic pain for like 12 years. It's gotten a lot better as I've, been able to process so many of these things and really fundamentally fix myself, fix my vibration. We're going to get into that in a little bit. It's funny. I mean, I feel like, how long have I been talking so far? I feel like I might want to do like 2 episodes on vibration, because it's so fucking important. But we'll see. I mean, we'll end up talking about vibration anyway on like every episode of the show. So it is what it is. So we're talking about ayahuasca sounds. The DMT thing that they were sending me good vibrations. Changing the vibration of words, black culture, etc. Should I talk about that before I talk about prayer? Yeah, well, let's leave prayer for the end. Prayer is a good one. Okay, so black culture is fucking brilliant. And it demonstrates its brilliance in many subtle ways. Because real brilliance is about subtle intuition. And subtly, the culture has intuited that our English language is oppressive. And they are 100% right. I'm an English major. I've been studying the language my entire life. I've become a detective, or I should say, for many years, I became a detective. And I would say that there is a mountain of proof that shows that the English language has been constructed very purposefully to fuck up our vibrations. And a lot of the words are oppressive. One of the most classic examples of this is that, like, the Rastafarians tend to like to use the word overstand instead of understand. Of course, classically, you talk about, you're driving on a parkway and parking in a driveway. What the fuck is that? That's so weird. Why would it be backwards like that? It doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of things about the language that don't make any sense, and until you learn that it's a cheat, like it was literally invented by elites. I don't know who the fuck, figured out this thing, this conglomeration of languages that were going on at the time, and like got everybody to like switch over to this aggravatingly complicated language. It's just like other languages are so much simpler. Whatever. I talked about this on previous episodes of the show. In black culture, they are masters at demystifying and taking the power out of words. The most classic one is and I'm not going to fucking be a baby here. I'm not going to say the N word, but the word nigger, which was a negative word. It was a derogatory word being used to oppress them. So they took that word nigger, and like now, it's like it's always the soft, it's the nigga. Now, as a nigga being used to describe any group of people, and there's basically two ways to use it. You can say, I'm like my nigga, or these niggas, and one is this group of people who I don't care for, this group of people that I like. So as you see, we take the word and we change it a little bit, and now we turn it into a positive. It's a positive that we can now use to describe groups of people that we don't like. We're not the niggers anymore. They're the niggas. Those niggas, right? And now where this word was really stilted, even though the word nigger, it's just a word, it didn't have any negative connotation, when it was invented, it started out as a word, but it was the way the word was used that then turned it into this dark thing. But then through the changing of this bit, now you've got nigga and these my niggas, and now this is this group of people that we want to be with, right? So that's a positive. We took something that was really truly dark, and now it's positive. Another simple definition of that is the word fat, P-H-A-T, fat, right? You're fat, you're F-A-T, you're fat. That's not good. Well, no, you ain't fat. You're fat. You're P-H-A-T, fat, girl. How you doing? You fat, right? What's another word? You're a gangster. You're arrested. You're a gangster. Gangster. Nah, that's gangsta. Now it's a word that describes a type of activity that holds no care for the consequences. And there's lots of ways you can be gangster. Now, what have we done? We've turned a negative word, gangster, into a positive word, gangsta. Yo, that's gangsta. So this goes like across the board. There's so many different fucking examples. I've been testing out comedy routines like on all this stuff. And which is why I'm like using the word. Like I really believe we're not babies. I love rap music. I end up using the word all the time. Like it's like silly for me to like be like, oh, the N word. Like really? Like I'm like I love black people. I tend to like black people more than I like white people. So like it's like silly. And just as stereotypes go, just like black people have tended to in my life that I've met have had a lot more energy, and I have a lot more energy. So like I'm a reverse racist. So many of my best friends are black, and like most of my black friends like not so precious about these words. It's like these weird people who live like these isolated lives who just feel so oppressed by everything that want to like make it a fucking crazy thing. Really, there's like something to celebrate there with, my niggas, man. Like to be able to take a word that is so powerfully negative against the group and turn it into something positive. It's fucking incredible. That's ill, man. Ill. You're sick. You're sick. That's sick. Like this is all the shit. Like every bad word, they take it and they demystify the word and they change it to make the meaning more powerful. So if you want to get into an even deeper level of this, like, as somebody who learned this over time, as a student of mysticism and starting to really understand, how important vibration and resonance was and the way we speak is, I'm a voiceover actor. I'm actually one of the most, and I probably didn't speak about this in my introduction of the show, probably one of the more successful voiceover actors of my generation, if not the most, in terms of really big voiceover gigs and the consistency that I work, the amount of fields that I've worked in, animation and narration and video games and tons of commercials. I was the voice of Pizza Hut. Want more taste? Get America's favorite pizza, Pizza Hut. Or Kia Motors. Buying a Kia is one smart move. GameStop, Cheetos, there's tons of that. I was for years a lot of these products. And the thing that I did, and so often a lot of the companies that I would work for extended periods of time, they would have substantial financial growth. And they didn't know it. I mean, because I didn't think anybody would believe me. And maybe you won't even believe me saying it, and it sounds like an egoic thing. But I know that a part of their success was what I was doing with the voiceover. I spent a lot of time thinking about the most honest assessment of what any of the businesses I was working for were capable of. So putting aside the fact that the freaking car salesman might have been a jerk and there might have been difficulties there that come up in getting a car from a car salesman, what I could want you, and also Pizza Hut and like, you know, the quality of the ingredients that they're using or whatever those things it might be. You know, I wouldn't focus on those things. I would focus on the fact that they could probably get you a pizza really quick, that the car was really good and really safe. You know, in Kia Motors instance, you know, they did generally make very, very good vehicles. You know, whatever the thing was, I wished and programmed into every tag that I ever did for Kia or Pizza Hut or Cheetos or GameStop a love for the customer, that I hoped that they got what they needed. I hope they got that pizza in time. I hope that it was fresh and they got the right ingredients and that it helped feed their family and that they were happy and they were glad that they did it. And when I said, want more taste? Get America's favorite pizza, Pizza Hut, now online. People could hear that I love them and that I at least had a wish and a hope and a dream that they were going to have a really good time getting a Pizza Hut pizza or whatever it might be. And in that way, that was my spiritual way of being a part of the capitalist system, going, I am wishing everybody the best. And it does something to all the reads for the commercials because it's a really earnest and real plead for, you know, goodness and charity and prosperity to your customer. And that's what the customer really wants, you know, from the, you know, it wants to feel like the companies and businesses that they're purchasing their items from or whatever are like, they're in it together. We're in it together, you know? And that's a way to do it. Channeling people through their frequencies. So because of the mathematical nature of people, channelers, when they're pulling up people, and you yourself, you can do this all the time, when you're thinking of a dead loved one, you don't understand. If you spend enough time with them and you imprint it on them, the thing that you're remembering is the unique shape of who they are. You've imprinted upon their math. And every single time you think of them, especially deeply, you connect yourself to the idea of who they are. And the idea of who they are never leaves. Whether or not you believe that there is another end of things and reincarnation and all these other things that I've been speaking about, which, you know, one day you hopefully will, because there's just so much more going on than just that. But it's okay if you're not there yet and you're putting it off to the side for a second. That's okay. We'll just think in terms of idea. You know, as long as the person's idea exists, you know, within the family, your uncle dies, but there's 60 people who know and love that person very much, and they still tell jokes about him, and they still laugh like him, and they still do all these things. Well, you are channeling the frequency of this thing. You're pulling this thing into existence. You could have a completely like there are ghosts sort of idea of it, where you're just literally tuning into the frequency that was imprinted in you when they were alive, and now you're bringing it forth. And if you get good at that, you could really, you know, do that. You know, people could do that, but it's quite deeper than that, because they are on the other side, and they will connect with you once you open yourself up to that. And then you'll really be cooking with gas as you connect to the frequencies and vibrations of these people, connect to who they are, connect to your love for them. They never go away. And when you know that too, really truly know that, you know, death won't seem like such this crazy thing that it seems like here on planet Earth. Tuning a radio. Yeah, it's just like tuning into a radio. Well, actually, that's not why I wrote that. I was saying, basically, we're all tuned. And we get what we put out in terms of our tuning. We are tuning to radio stations. There are all different radio frequencies around, right? There's 106.1 and there's 105.2, and there's all these different stations. You get what your radio tunes to. And you, for all intents and purposes, are a vibrating antenna that is putting out a signal and getting signals back. So tuning your radio and living your life is about vibrating predominantly in the direction that you want to go. Whatever it is that you want to see be the case, You need to spend as much time sort of believing that that's possible, believing that it's already there. You're already living that. That's already something that is just like a foregone conclusion. That's what you want, and so it is, and God is giving it to you, essentially. And I'm going to talk about that more in just a second. But tuning into the radio, because we're going to close this thing talking about the prayer, and really talking about the rain dance. The collective consciousness is the collective vibration. So we live under a collective consciousness, and ultimately what a collective consciousness really is the collective vibration of a hive mind. The dominant thoughts within the hive are the dominant sort of pressures and realities of the mind. You know, the majority of us think we can't fly, and until we start thinking that maybe we could, that's not going to change, really. And it's going to be really, really difficult for anybody to start thinking, I can float and I can lift my mind, and there's all these different reasons because I'm just a mind. Well, unfortunately, there's like this huge hive mind of people who don't believe that's possible, who are essentially canceling out your shit. And this is happening all the time. Lots of people are being asked by Spirit to save their families, to heal entire lineages of families that have struggled with addiction or whatever it might be. And you will be an avatar of the energy, and you will struggle with it, and it will be up to you to get over it. And then in the getting over it, you will actually make it easier for the people around you to get over their own things that are similar energetically in nature to the thing that you are dealing with. But the collective consciousness is very much a thing. And like when you do something like have a divorce, you know, oftentimes men go into massive depressions like I did because the collective consciousness really frowns upon that. And you feel very judged. You feel like you did the wrong thing. And like, you know, you don't want to be a bad man. And, you know, it's a real thing. This is the pressure of the collective consciousness, especially when you have family who has traditional values like I do. Okay. Cats purring, animal sounds, nature sounds the body makes. Cats purring, it's a vibration. They sit there and they set up a certain vibration that's this soothing and healing vibration that they put out. How wonderful is it when cats go on? I know they've done studies about cats and that their purring vibration actually heals them. You know, animal sounds in general, there are various sounds that are being used, vibrations that are being using to call their mates. You know, frequencies that are being used to create radar and all this other stuff, frequency and sounds in nature for you. I mean, even like little things, sounds in your belly to sounds that you might make like a yawn, a little, or if you know, like when you, I was just yawning, but another one's when you go, and you can do it. Try it at home. Just do the thing where you go, It feels great. There's something to the sound. I don't know what the sound is, but our intuition is connecting us to make this sound and make this movement, and that it will help relax us. So sound is a very important thing. Key vibrational sounds in the language programming. Well, I talked a little bit about this before, about like, you know, parking in the driveway and blah blah blah. But and the vibrational sounds in the language, because it's really tricky. There's so many little parts of the language. A little Latin word here, a little root word there, a little root word there, and this comes from this, and this comes from that, and this comes from that. Well, a thing like, you know, a word like direction and dir, you know, is you know. I'm trying to break down some of the etymology of it in my mind right now because I didn't have a prepared bit. But if you like pull out the vowels and just look at the consonants and look at other words that you could make, you can kind of figure out what it is, like direction. Yeah, because I mean, it like goes to kind of like dirt. It's weird. Yeah, it's weird. See, a word like direction, those compound words are actually weird ones to think about in these terms. Usually, like you do smaller ones when they do a bit. Like they'll show you blade, black, block, blade, black, block. I guess that's a good three of them right there. But if you take out the vowels, they're all fundamentally kind of similar there. And a blade and a black and a block. You know, a block's just like a solid thing. A black is a solid thing. A blade is going to lead you to a solid thing. The blade, you know, it's like kind of a deathly vision of a blade, but could be connected to a blade. And you'll see connections like that you might normally call coincidental, but oh my God, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Like they're never not there. They're always there. Like things that you'd be like, wow, that's a really dark connection in the sort of germination of how this word was created in the first place. Words are crazy and tricky, and the English language, because it's a conglomeration of all these other languages, it's actually very tricky, because sometimes words will be made up of all sorts of different little pieces that, like, to go back and like look at them and look at the roots of them, really go back and look at definitive definitions of every root word, and then look at what the actual word is and go, is this word's definition like what it's supposed to be? Has it been pulled into a direction that's a little closer to some of the things that are in the way here? There's a whole just like confusion and Tower of Babel thing that goes on with information and the language and esoteric information. Like there was an obstruction of the 13th horoscope, which you can find information on the 13th horoscope for a long time. They didn't want to show that. The obstruction of the number 13 and the fact that it's lucky that it's supposed to represent God, or the sum of all creation, the sum of all intelligence. So there's all sorts of weird things going on within the backdrop of how our language and all these things have been made, which affects the way the way in which all these words are vibrating. It confuses the way all these words are vibrating. However, we can take conscious action like people do when they make the great slang that has such a clear meaning and feeling behind it that makes everybody in the population want to use it. Even like a word nigger, where like you're like, I want to be able to say that when they're singing the song. It sounds fun. It sounds good. Yeah. Words sound great when you're using them with resonance and real meaning, and like there's a deeper resonant meaning to what is being said. And there is in those cases. Okay, so we're going to close down this show with the story about the rain dance and prayer. I always thought that a rain dance was just prayer with a dance added. And I always thought prayer was like stupid. Nobody was listening. And, and then you're going to add a dance and that's going to be any better. Well, I added a dance to please the gods, kind of thing. But that's actually not it. So there's a story that I heard told that I learned how it was. And I remember this story, but I don't remember whose story it was, unfortunately. But this guy talked about going with a shaman from one of the tribes in America to do a rain dance. And they went down to the field, and the shaman, stepped onto the field, and he stood there for a moment, and he looked up with his eyes closed, and he was standing there in just sort of silence, like breathing. And then after just a minute or so, he turned to the guy and he said, "I'm hungry. Let's eat." And the guy said, "What?" And maybe it was 2 minutes, but it was like quick enough that he was just sort of like, "What? We're done?" And they're walking back to the car, and he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "But like I thought we came to, like pray for rain." And he said, "Nah." He said, "You pray for rain, you get no rain." And the guy said, "So what did you do?" And he said, "I imagined that it had rained. I felt the moisture from the rain wet against my feet. I could smell the moisture in the air. I saw that the crops had bloomed. And I saw us tending to them. And I saw my family fed and happy. And I was grateful because it had already happened." That is a prayer. That is a rain dance. You want to make something happen in this vibrational world? You need to match your vibration to it's happening. It's happened. It's happening. It's happened is really the best. It has happened. It is. I am rich. I am happy. I am comfortable. You need to pretend, because that is how you match the vibration of the things that you want. This has been Everything They Don't Want You to Know. I hope that you'll join me next week. I don't know what's next on my list, and I'm not going to go in and check out right now, but we're going to continue with all these universal laws, and there's so many more pieces that expand now on the vibration and the law of vibration. Everything is vibrating, and then what's happening within this polarized vibrating system? Where does it go from here? What are the mainline patterns of reality? Because those are the patterns of your life every day. And that's why they don't want you to know that shit. They don't want you to know fuck all. Anyway, I love you. This is Jesse Blaze Snider saying I love you truly. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll join me again next time on another fucking awesome episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know. Peace.